You're starting? All right. I see the thumbs up. Thank you. Welcome to this afternoon session. This is called a master class, I guess. And as the title said, we will spend about 45 minutes in developing expertise. How do we develop expertise and talent in the healthcare sector? And I'm Silke Vogel. I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Graduate Studies at Duke NUS and also the head of the new Center for Lifelong Learning. We have divided the talk today into 3 segments. I will present a little bit on the new opportunities in healthcare, the challenges, and how do we identify talents. And then Professor Lim will talk a little bit about regulatory professionals and training. And then Dr. Khan will round it off with looking at innovation. When we talk about developing expertise and talents in healthcare sector, we need to really identify what are the forces in healthcare and why do we need to, what are the new talents that we need to develop and how do we move forward. And we have heard this morning already a little bit around this, but I just wanted to recap that. Before we start, also setting the framework a little bit that we have seen this morning, we're looking at future workforce skill set. And recently, this has been divided into 3 economies: the care economy, the digital economy, and the green economy, plus, as we just heard, Industry 4.0. When we talk about healthcare sector, we, of course, clearly encompass the care economy, but we also have to borrow or receive talent from the digital economy, because with the technology that's now been integrated in healthcare, we need to develop those skills and transfer them over to healthcare. So when we look at future workforce skill sets, we need to really examine the changes in healthcare that provide these new opportunities. Next slide, please. Thanks. So what are sort of the forces in the Singapore healthcare system or landscape that we need to take into account when we look at new talent development? So the key challenges today, and these are really not new to anybody, but just to look at them real quick, key challenges include the rapid aging of the population, increasing burden of chronic disease in Singapore, the rising cost of healthcare, limited health workforce and competing demands. Still, we have challenges with the COVID-19 pandemic, and of course we need to have access to innovative therapeutics. And all of these challenges really put stresses on our resources, on people, spaces, and money. This has led, these stresses and challenges actually left the healthcare sector to undergo shifts, to really move towards new models to accommodate these stresses, and a big transformation is underway. So this slide sort of summarizes these sort of transformation. And I'm just going to run through these 4 points. These are the major 4 points that are transforming the healthcare system in Singapore. I'm not saying they're comprehensive, but this sort of gives a good idea. And around these shifts, we should set our future skills development in healthcare. So first, we're looking at I want to go up. Gonna go up. Gonna be very persistent. All right. Okay, so first we're looking at new healthcare delivery models focused on value-based healthcare. So we're moving towards a preventive holistic model. But also we're looking at compensation of healthcare providers not for quantity of procedures performed, but rather for the quality of the care they provide, measured by patient health outcomes. So this is a value-based healthcare term. Second, we're looking at new care models away from hospitals and toward preventive medicine. So we're looking at care being received in community hospitals or closer to home or even at home. And here we already see the integration of technology where we have untethered care towards the home and virtually away from facility, like I'm using telemedicine, and it has been on the rise during the pandemic. And of course, we need to discuss the improvement of end-life care and palliative care. Looking at new technologies that are entering the healthcare systems, it's clear we have artificial intelligence or robots or other things entering the healthcare system as diagnostic and prognostic tools. But as we also heard earlier, healthcare professionals need to build new relationships with these technologies. And so we need to be very aware of this, that they are going to be trained to work with technologies and then work with the patients through these technologies. And healthcare professionals are also integrating technology in their teaching in the clinical setting. Lastly, we have new innovative treatments that come to market or being developed and that need to be approved so patients have access to those new treatments. And these include neotherapeutics. Just think the fast development of the vaccines during the pandemic, but also now the upcoming area of cell therapies. And of course, we have innovative medical devices, including AI technologies and so forth. So when we look at this transformation of the healthcare system, we really need to think hard, how do we train our future talent? And so where does this leave us? So I think we need to really look at the healthcare system, healthcare as a healthcare ecosystem, to look at many sectors together. So a healthcare ecosystem encompasses many sectors, and with that comes a diverse workforce that pertains to providing care, services, or products. And we need to be very cognizant of this, that healthcare has all these sectors, and within these sectors, we have the professionals that we have to take into account, that we have to train and put together into this ecosystem. I'm not saying the slide is comprehensive, but I think these are the major sectors in the healthcare system. We have, of course, the healthcare delivery, which the clinicians, allied health nurses, and pharmacists, for example. We have government sector, like MOH, where we have policymakers, researchers, and regulatory professionals. Within the pharmaceutical sectors, of course, we have R&D researchers, but we also need to look downstream at innovative manufacturing. We have the medtech sector, and between pharmaceutical and medtech sector, we have the regulatory professionals, of course, that we need to look at. And in the medtech sector, we have engineers, innovators, and designers, and researchers. For, of course, new technologies, we have the innovators. And then classically in academia, we need to train researchers, educators, and innovators, or they have to provide the training. And this is just always to keep in mind that we have a healthcare ecosystem, and in this healthcare ecosystems, we have to converge and train everybody together to achieve the transformation. So with that in mind, at Duke NUS Medical School, we have now launched the Center of Lifelong Learning. So the Center of Lifelong Learning at Duke NUS Medical School, we really see ourselves as a hub for programs and courses, enabling professionals to upskill, innovate, or lead with the aim to improve healthcare and to lead the transformation in the healthcare system. We're located at Duke NUS Medical School, which is up at the SingHealth Outram campus. And Duke NUS is a collaboration between Duke University, North Carolina in the US, and NUS, National University here in Singapore. We were established in 2010 as the first and only postgraduate medical school here in Singapore. We have expanded to PhD programs, and of course, we have a very strong research program. We partnered with SingHealth, we're right next to SingHealth, to form the Academic Medical Center. You can see right here, we have Duke NUS on the SingHealth campus. The campus looks actually quite different now. We have new buildings up. Here's the new academia building, and we have really built a bridge between Duke NUS and SingHealth. The important point about being part of the Academic Medical Center for us is that we have on one hand expertise that can help teaching in the courses, that can provide valuable insight, but really help us identify gap and needs in the healthcare system that we need to develop and teach and put education materials around. Just as a note, of course, Duke NUS Medical Center, SingHealth Duke NUS Medical Center is not the only healthcare center in the nation. We work together, we are one of 3 regional health systems, and the other 2 are NUHS and National Healthcare Group. And we're really trying to work across the island together to develop the expertise and identify gaps that we can address. So coming back to sort of the structure for professional development, NUS has, as you also have heard this morning, allows us now to offer micro courses or smaller certificates that are credit bearing. And I just wanted to quickly run through this. So NUS accredited courses, you can actually take a small certificate, an executive certificate that's NUS accredited, credit bearing, and basically you take 4 one-modular credit courses. So 1 modular credit is about 10 hours face-to-face. If you stack 4 of them together, you will receive an executive certificate. If you have a subject area that's being offered in larger segments, or you want to learn more, you can also attend graduate certificates. These are 16 modular credits. The smallest unit here is a 4-modular credit course, which carries 40 hours per week of workload, face-to-face time. And 4 of them stacked together, you can receive a graduate certificate. And then there's other courses that are provided as graduate diplomas, or then, of course, the traditional master's program. The beauty of the system is also that you can, of course, take the standalone courses. You can stack the courses to the executive certificates or graduate certificates, but you can also start with an executive certificate and stack it up to a graduate certificate. And if you have more time and you want to learn more, you can maybe go to a graduate diploma or a master's. So there's now a lot of flexibility in the learning path for working professionals, and which has been really a great step forward. In addition, just to mention, NUS and Duke NUS separately still offer branded certificates for participation or achievements in doing short course attendance and workshops or online courses. I also want to mention that at Duke NUS we integrate team-based learning in our professional development courses, and this really comes out of our medical school, where during their time in medical school, our students don't hear any lectures. We adapted fully team-based learning because we think it's a better way of learning, and people are really coming out and can apply their learning very well. So there's no lectures, and we sort of took this on and integrated this into our coursework. So essentially how this works is team-based learning. Before class, the students will learn some of the content through their own readings, lecture slides, or videos that are posted online. However, once they come into class, the classroom is divided into groups. First, students take an individual test to sort of check on their knowledge, but then there's a lot of teamwork, taking the team test with some feedback on the results, but also we have experts in the room explaining the content. In the adult context, we also have experts giving short lectures to really provide more content. The cornerstone of this team-based learning, and especially in adult education, is that we have a significant problem-solving case study in all of our coursework. And that will really help to apply the knowledge that you learned earlier into a day-to-day learning experience, so that when you go back to work on Monday, hopefully, you can integrate that into your work. So coming back to Duke NUS, and I'm just going to show how we organize ourselves for our program. So the programs, we hope to meet the needs of the healthcare professionals to optimize the impact for patients in the healthcare system. And remember that we just started the center, and so we have quite a few courses now, but it will be growing over the next few years. But we have divided the coursework into 5 subject areas, sort of along the transformation of healthcare as we see it. So first, we are looking at supporting innovations in the healthcare services. Then we have an area of enabling improved care delivery. We have an area of empowering healthcare professionals with new education tools. We have an area of facilitating access to therapeutics and medtech devices, and then an area of accelerating innovation in the healthcare system. And I will, for the next few slides, I will just highlight 3 courses out of each of these areas, and then Professor Lim will highlight the professional development courses in this area, and then Dr. Khan will go to the innovation side. So when we look at supporting innovations in healthcare services, we have now run a graduate certificate program. So this is 4 modules, 4 hours each, on health services innovation, improving the performance of the health services. And this is situated within Sang Health and the Health Services Division. And this is looking at improving the performance of health services. And this cartoon was given to me by this group, but that shows it quite nicely that the problem in the health services is we have new demand and new supply, but they have no increasing budgets. So this course tries to help with innovations in the health services to really overcome these constraints. So what does it look like? There's 4 modules offered in this course. Hopefully we can see this. So there's 1 on implementation science, 1 on research methods, another one on health technology assessment, and the last one on healthcare and data science. But really, we want to enable the workforce to identify opportunities for improvement in healthcare, measuring and enhancing patient outcomes, improving value for money spent on care, and implementing evidence into practice. This is really targeted at health professionals from the healthcare delivery side and the government sectors, including clinicians, nurses, civil servants, and allied health. We had one run so far. Can you go next slide? So we call this a significant impact, but we had sort of, this is the first program that addresses health services innovation to improve health outcomes in Singapore. We launched it last year in May 2021 with our first cohort, but now we see a high demand for enrollment, and we have more people enrolling, trying to enroll than we have spaces. Hopefully we can expand on this. And as I said, we're training health professionals from across the healthcare sector. The next program is looking under the program area of enabling improved care delivery. So here we have palliative care, where we try to help improve palliative care as a skill and demand for community care. And just a word to this palliative care work stream, this is part of the Singapore Healthcare Master Plan. And the master plan has supportive and palliative care highlighted as a skill demand for community care. So we really need to ensure we have adequate number of healthcare professionals with the appropriate training to meet the demand of palliative care and long-term care. These courses, these are several workshops, so they're not credit-bearing, but we offer quite a few workshops for clinicians, nurses, therapists, pharmacists, and social workers. This work stream is anchored in our Leon Center for Palliative Care at Duke NUS, the LCPC Center, which has the mission to deliver high-quality postgraduate palliative care. And as you can see here, the courses are aligned to a skills framework for healthcare, relevant and rigorous, and they're really adapted to fit the need of the different healthcare providers. So workshops are segregated out for nurses, therapists, pharmacists, social workers, and doctors, but we also offer an interprofessional course. So these have been quite popular and been running for a few years across the different healthcare delivery professionals. Going forward, they will also develop new courses, for example, palliative care courses for ICU, and hopefully by next year we'll have a graduate certificate for palliative care for pharmacists, but there will be more and more development in this area because there's such a high need and demand. So we have trained in specifically these workshops over 1,000 healthcare professionals. And from the feedback that we collected, students have been very satisfied with the course and would recommend it. They have gained new knowledge. They can apply the knowledge and skills to their environment, and they will use what they have learned in the course in their healthcare delivery system. So it's, we're very pleased with that. Last but not least, just a course, a smaller certificate course, as an example, an executive certificate course on empowering healthcare professionals with new education tools. So this is towards the clinician educators or educators in the healthcare system to look at how can we integrate technology in health care provider training. So this is geared towards clinicians, nurses, allied health educators. And basically, in a nutshell, what we do here, we teach how to use technology-enhanced learning. We have the executive cert, as you remember, is one module, is 10 hours face-to-face, so you have 40 hours face-to-face total. You will learn a little bit about principles of learning and teaching in the professions, then how to apply technology-enhanced learning, and then we have 2 electives where you can learn about simulation-based education or immersive learning or, for example, serious gaming. So this is also a very popular course for our educators, and hopefully we'll build on that more. So this was just across the area, a little bit of a taste menu to show what we are offering in our healthcare system. So with that, I'm going to give over to Professor Lim, who will be talking about the next area. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, Silke. She's wishing me luck to see if this works. Seems to. So I'm going to focus on the particular area of regulatory professional training, and this is quite well established. It's been around for 5 to 6 years now. So there's quite a bit of experience that we've had in terms of this area. But just to provide the context of it, when we talk of regulation, it can sound like a terribly dull topic, although, of course, during the course of the pandemic, everyone seems to be a regulatory expert now when it comes to approving new products. But we try and frame this to remind people that when we look at regulation, which is covering health products, health services, and from the health industries, there's actually a wider socio-economic benefit. And so we link it to the UN Sustainable Development Goal 3, and if it's done well, there are obviously benefits to the health systems and outcomes, but also socio-economic benefits and outcomes as well. And this was something that we framed really for government regulators from the region, because otherwise regulation is just viewed as a big stick of do this, don't do that. But there's a lot more to it in terms of promoting access when we're thinking of essential medicines, medical devices, and vaccines, and of course, high-quality health services and a health-promoting environment. And so regulation really should be viewed as an enabler, and philosophically this is what we say in relation to the modules that we run, that it can offer competitive economic advantage. And when we think of smart regulation, which is not specific just to health product or health services regulation, there's always a lever that has to be there. And certainly in terms of what we're trying to do, public health protection must be the first thing we do, and so it must go down towards this side of the lever from the fulcrum, but the enabling and facilitating is quite critical if we're thinking of relevant, responsive, and ready regulation. And so the idea is protect and enable, not or enable. And similar to what Silke was showing in terms of the broader healthcare system, all this will come to play a part as well in terms of good regulation. So the changing environment, and I don't intend to read through all the items here, these will be very familiar to you already in terms of aging, technological advances, social media, and so on. And the changing healthcare, of course, the pandemic itself has fundamentally changed a lot of the principles in terms of how regulation is applied. And we often talk now of regulatory agility to try and bring products to the market if we're thinking of timely access. But that is done without compromising safety, quality, and efficacy of products. And then managing expectations of the public, rapid advances in biomedical R&D, and this very critical area of utilizing real-world data and evidence also now comes into play when we're thinking of regulation. How does one make a decision based on real-world evidence rather than, let's say, full clinical trial data, which has been run for several years, let's say? And of course, a patient-centric healthcare system. And when we think of relevant regulation, there are four things that are quite critical. There has to be a continual systematic review of existing rules, which is now an obvious thing, but was not always the case in the past. And formerly, when I used to run the Health Sciences Authority and I looked around the region, this was not an assumption that was made. So you could have regulation that was quite out of date, and no wonder then it was very difficult to bring products to market, let alone the major issue we face in the region of fragmented regulation, where regulations are not harmonized, and therefore it's very difficult for industry to bring even the same product into market. And while it has improved significantly, we've seen this also playing out in the course of the last 2 years, that there have been differences. Partly, of course, countries have been procuring different vaccines and even devices for diagnostic testing. But the ability to harmonize that regulation across countries is not fully there, although it's much better now than it used to be. And so then a systems approach is also important for optimizing and complying to high standards of safety, quality, and efficacy. But equally important in a way is a well-informed stakeholder population. And so regulation is not just the responsibility of the regulator. The public as a whole must come in. And again, as we've seen in the course of the last 2 years during the pandemic, and the industry and other players, and I'll show you in later slides that coming to our courses are not just industry regulatory professionals or government national health product regulatory professionals, but academia, researchers and developers have been coming in, and basically even from other arms of government, they've been interested to find out how good regulation works. And a lot of this does revolve around good partnerships with the regulated parties. So there's a whole ecosystem. And these are some of the things that we try and get across in the course of our modules. Now, the Center of Regulatory Excellence itself, which runs the modules for these particular courses, was set up in 2014 at Duke NUS with the aim of developing regulatory talent, because the assessment then from an EDB survey of industry was there was insufficient regulatory knowledge and capacity, even though there was a major move of R&D in clinical trials to our part of the world. There was also a need to promote policy innovation. So picking up what I said earlier, it's not just a matter of doing what regulators have done for years and years and years. We have to have regulatory innovation if we're going to see regulatory agility. And what was also critical then was to establish a regulatory network platform. And I was pleasantly surprised, because we've used the term neutral academic platform basing this at Duke NUS, but I found we have found the power of bringing together all the stakeholders, whether they're from industry or government or other players, without this concern of conflict of interest once they're going through our courses. And that really is very important, not just in terms of the learning experience of the individuals, but actually when they go back to their careers after that, they've established networks that are of significance to them when they are doing their jobs. So the core was set up with that purpose. We have a strong focus on Southeast Asia, but in fact, we have a major presence around the Asia Pacific as well, and we've been very active in the APEC economies. So coming to the modules themselves, this really summarizes what we're trying to do with the courses. One, obviously, is to increase access to quality training. And we do have self-study courses via online platforms. As Silke was saying, in the team-based learning approach, you start with that first before they come together. And then the workshops are conducted. And we say virtual platforms because we were running these courses in person, but in June 2020, we swung everything completely online. And again, I was skeptical at first whether we could replicate the learning experience, but I think people actually have got used to this, and now we have the problem of how do we get this back to in-person, or how do we run hybrid courses? We haven't quite figured this out yet, because everyone's got so used now to engaging over Zoom, and it seems, at least from the feedback, that they have not suffered any major sort of interaction, because we actually factor in networking time online into the courses as well. And the other advantage then going online was that we were able to bring in participants from other parts of the world who previously would not have been able to fly into Singapore, and we now have some participants from Africa, from Mongolia, and interesting parts of the world as well. Then, of course, what we're trying to do is address current issues in regulatory science, and to do this, we collaborate with global leading organizations. So through networks that we had before, through the Health Sciences Authority, through the Ministry of Health, we've been able to bring in the key experts from national government authorities, whether it's the FDA, the European Medicines Agency, the Japanese Pharmaceutical and Medical Devices Agency, as well as the key experts from industry. And these form our faculty. So they're the ones who give the lectures, they interact with the students, they interact with them in their assessments as well. And so on this basis, we're able to update knowledge on innovations, new requirements, and guidelines. And then we're able to cover a wide scope of relevant topics. And we can cover entry level to experienced professionals to far more advanced technical topics. And then, of course, they've got various options as well available for their professional development. And as Silke was saying, we've built on the Duke NUS team-based learning, which was originally for our graduate medical students, but we've adapted it for adult education. And really, it does give a very optimized learning experience, because with the practicums, with the peer interaction, they're able to learn from one another, and it's not just the experts alone. But the experts, nonetheless, are critical to provide real-life applications, and this global network is also important, so that the faculty, even pre-COVID, we were able to bring them in, or they would pre-record if the timing was off. But again, in the course of the last 2 years, they've been very active. And interestingly, I found people in Europe are willing to wake up at 3 a.m. sometimes to participate and give lectures, to interact live with the students, which is very encouraging. And then it's a very targeted approach as well to address gaps. But what is important about our program is it's based in Singapore and the region, so it's culturally relevant. There have been regulatory courses run in the US and Europe, but none before we started were really focused on Southeast Asia and the Asia Pacific. And what is critical is that it's very practically oriented, so it's not academic. And we did find that, of course, even prior to our setting up these courses, there would always be conferences and various sort of workshops that were run, sometimes by professional conference organizers, but it tended to be very academic. And I think what was important about bringing together in the graduate certificate framework was this need, this ability to interact and talk about practical applications. So the structure of the Health Products Regulation graduate certificate is shown on the slide here, where we start with a fundamentals course, and we run this every year, so the next one will be run in September, and we've been doing it annually since it began. There was one year we actually had to repeat it because the demand was so great. And then the modules that Silke was referring to earlier are built up here, and basically they can choose any of the 3 modules to complete the graduate certificate, whether it's in the sort of areas here in terms of pre-market process, post-market activities, or regulatory trends. But we've also been happy to see that those who've completed even the 4 modules and obtained their graduate certificate, there are still those who carry on taking other modules. So there are 11 different modules at the moment, covering the whole range of pharmaceuticals, biologics, advanced therapies, and medtech. But we're moving on as well to new areas in medtech, specifically in vitro diagnostics and software as a medical device. And so these are new growth areas in the industry and in R&D, in the R&D space as well. And how we're doing this is we're working very closely with the Diagnostics Development Hub at A*STAR, DXD Hub, where DXD Hub will focus on the modules, on the components on the left in terms of product development and manufacturing of IVD and SAMDs. And we will be looking from our network in terms of those areas that cover the regulatory requirements of IVD and SAMD. And so when we look at across these 6 components, you can look at the entire total product life cycle. And there are 2 groups of 3 2-day workshops covering these 2 major components. So we're still in we've run some shorter workshops, not within the formalized structure of this, but this will be rolled out soon in relation to our regulatory professional training. And in terms of the broader education ecosystem, so what I talked about were the things on top here, the graduate certificate with the 11 modules, the new executive certificates we're going to run for IVD and SAMD, but we've also run bespoke workshops, sometimes at the request of governments or companies, in various areas, whether it's medical device, we've worked with WHO in pharmacovigilance, health technology assessment is a key area as well. And we have had a few online programs, but we see the need to increase these, and so there'll be more online components that we will be providing as we move forward. So just within this one area of the Center for Lifelong Learning at Duke NUS, you can see there are quite a wide range of things that are coming out to meet the needs of the working professionals. And in terms of participation, it just summarizes the number of participants, these are including repeat participants, the number of economies or countries represented. We've had a lot of global expert faculty engaging with our participants, and more than 70 organizations have partnered with us as well. In addition, to support the regulators from the region, we have an ASEAN Tuition Support Scholarship, and working with the Australian government, they also provide some scholarships to send people from countries that they're supporting to our courses. And so it's a very diverse learning experience. The pie chart basically shows a lot of our participants from industry, with a significant number from regulatory agencies and academia, with varying years of regulatory experience. And so, as I was mentioning earlier, it's interesting that we're now finding people from other parts of government, researchers coming in addition to those that we were targeting initially, which were really just the regulators in national regulatory authorities and regulatory professionals in industry. And this one just highlights all the various organizations we've worked with in terms of sending people to us I don't know where the number comes from, so I'll trust whoever prepared this slide. But basically, you can see that we've had national regulatory authorities, academia and research, government, and industry still forms the largest number of participants coming to our courses. And so, in summary, we've been the first dedicated program for regulatory professionals in Singapore. Otherwise, people had to go overseas before. And interestingly, when we surveyed them, 64% reported career advancement as a result of going through the graduate certificate. So that's very positive that companies and their HR departments have also seen the value in terms of their own career development. And more than 90% have reported that they've learned new pertinent knowledge, advanced skills, and a deeper understanding of the field. And managers from Singapore-based companies have provided feedback that, in fact, they are looking for professionals who have taken the graduate certificate or selected modules. So this is very encouraging for us, and it will give us more impetus to build on the further developments in what we offer. So I think with that, I've reached the end of my portion, and I'll pass over to Mary.
Hi, testing. I think before we start, maybe just to get a sensing of the profile of people in the room, can I just understand how many of you are from the healthcare sector? There's quite a number of you. How about academia? And private sector? And how many of you are involved in innovations in your sector? Only one. Or how many of you feel that you might get involved in innovations or transformation in your sector? A few more. Right, so I think today I was invited to give this sharing about what we do with Duke NUS in the space of innovation in healthcare. Because we teach a framework called Biodesign. So I'm the program director for Singapore Biodesign, and I also work for the Tech Transfer Office at A*STAR. All right, so what is Singapore Biodesign and why are we working with Duke NUS? So Singapore Biodesign was started in 2010 together with EDB and A*STAR, and it's a methodology using the design thinking approach to healthcare innovations. So contrary to what people think that innovation should be creative and all that, there is actually a methodology to it and an approach to it. And so that's what we subscribe to. And over the last 10 years, we have actually trained more than 1,000 individuals into our program. And we have everything from light touch, right, to high touch. And so earlier on in our days where we first created the program, we were very much focused on high touch. We had quite a lot of innovation fellowships, and we were trying to train our students. But since then, we have actually moved on, and now we are going through larger outreach, right, by partnering with Duke NUS to be able to give workshops, right, and also be able to support companies later on through workplace learning. So what is biodesign and how are we incorporating this into our training? So biodesign can actually be distilled down into 3 approaches: the identify phase, invent, and implement. And it was initially created for medical device innovation. But along the way, we have found this to be a very robust methodology for anything that is healthcare innovation, anything that touches people. Because from a design thinking perspective, we always have to interact with the patients, the doctors, the payers, and all this requires you to understand how each stakeholder thinks, right? And this is quite different as opposed to how drug discovery and development is done. So what we had done together with Duke NUS and of course CORE here is that we had spent a good number of months, right, working through this framework because we wanted to make this something that's available to everyone to know how to guide your own training and development. So what we had come down to is we had distilled this down to 8 competencies in what we call the Innovation Skills and Competency Framework. So this actually mirrors the Skills Future Framework, but for innovation. So if you look at this, for innovation, we don't discriminate between different career professionals or not. In fact, we're trying to catch all because we believe that this is a foundational approach that everyone should be armed with. So if you look at our target audience, we really, not only target the medical doctor, which is where we first started off with, but increasingly we are now reaching out to the pharmacists, the nurses, the allied health. And of course, for us in technology, we also try and reach out to the technologists. So this includes the scientists, engineers. Then the last group of people is really the business development and the regulatory people. So you'll see commercialization, innovation managers, as well as regulatory professionals. And very similar to the skills framework, we try and cater to a wide range of different innovation experience. And so we have courses that are packed to beginner, intermediate, advanced, and expert. And along the way, as we go on, there's actually more hands-on and more workplace learning that's incorporated as well. So what this means is when we recommended this framework, we not only recommended the competencies, all right, for each of the different career professionals, we also tried to, come back with training pedagogy. So what is it? Is that all organizations should be prepared to embrace the blended learning framework, which includes classroom, tech-enabled, and workplace learning. But besides this, organizations also need to empower their learners with the correct budget, right? And also the learning and organizational development teams within your organization also need to be able to conform the training framework and to curate good vendors or trainers who can support their own staff in their adult training. So as we do this, the important thing is not just having the operational operational approaches in place. But what we are really going for are the outcomes. So currently what you see sometimes is, we say, oh, we have so many people enrolled and so many people are satisfied. But actually at the governmental level, that's not what we're looking for, right? Besides that, we are looking for how these people can be more effective in their jobs. So how can you be, taking on innovation and transforming your workplace needs? Right? And of course, the last one is whether we can have commercial economic impact. That's from the kind of A-star angle where I am. But of course, if you come from a healthcare agency, you are also looking at the healthcare and socio-economic impact. All right, so really what our desired goals from doing this training, one is really to create competitive talent and innovation amidst the global trends. I think where we are headed now, especially with a healthcare ITM in the making, we are really looking at healthcare transformation as a key enabler of where we are going in the care economy. Second thing is, there are so many training programs, and we haven't actually understood where each of us play. So with a good training framework, we can figure out where all our training programs plug in and where the gaps are so that we can create an end-to-end training framework. Finally, this health and medtech innovation skills and competency framework also benefits an individual in your personal development. So if you look at this framework and guidance document, really, you'll see the 8 competencies and you can figure out where you might be lacking. So I can say that, even though I've been training the biodesign methodology, I still attend the core courses on the digital health products regulation because I need to keep abreast with the latest regulatory trends. So these are things that we will continue to do the upskilling and the lifelong learning for. All right, so this really is how many people we have touched just last year. It was the first year that we had rolled out the Skills Future workshop together with Duke and US, and we're proud to say that we actually surpassed our KPI then. We actually almost doubled what we intended to reach out to, and that's all thanks to Duke and US support, as well as I think the overall climate in Singapore to embrace lifelong learning and upskilling of the adult professionals, especially in the healthcare innovation space. So you'll see here that we not only train the healthcare professionals, but also those in the startup and MNC space as well. And I think finally, I'll just end with this list of courses. Really, if you look at our courses, they are currently very bite-sized. The reason for that is because I think half of our target audience are actually healthcare professionals, and they barely have the time, to take leave from their very busy jobs. So, and also when we surveyed them, it's not that everybody in Singapore really craves for that piece of paper. So we have decided that we need to be practical. So we will continue to run 1 or 2 day courses because we believe that this is a good way to impart the knowledge. But what will happen next is actually that we are working with the organizations. So for example, with NHIC, the National Health Innovation Center, who gives out lots of health and medtech innovation grants, what we are doing with them is working with them so that after the course, they can follow up with these participants to find out how they are applying the learning into their own workplace projects. So this is how we will be able to continue to follow up and achieve the impact that we would like to have. So with this, I think we'll end the session, right? All right, thank you very much.
Any questions for any of us? Oh, no. Any questions? Do you see a large demand for regulatory demand in the next 5 years? John?
I think based on what we've seen so far, the answer would be yes, because regulation, as I defined it earlier, is not a simple list of do's and don'ts. And again, I think the experience of the pandemic has shown that if we are really moving towards regulatory agility, you do need technical competence. So I think just based on the trend we've seen, I would expect the answer to be yes. We've not actually done a proper survey, but there has been no lack of demand and participants signing up for what we've been offering so far. So I think that's the short answer.
Thank you. Would the growth area be more medtech or pharmaceutical areas? Looking at James.
Well, I can have a stab first and James can jump
Yeah.
in. But I think medtech is growing extremely fast, which is why I mentioned earlier that we have to add on these new components to look into the medtech space. But pharmaceuticals actually has not really declined. In fact, I think with the R&D, it is continuing to move forward. And in fact, actually, it's the crossovers, I think, that we will also see an increasing need for. And we may have to restructure some of our courses. So in fact, our fundamentals module that we originally started just focusing on pharmaceuticals has added on a proportion for medtech. And in fact, it covers both at this point in time. And I think our modules will have to be structured in that way going forward. James, do you have anything to add?
I think, John, what you say is right in the sense that in the future, you will not see a medtech per se or pharma per se because you actually see sort of like a merging in between. So many of you might have heard of the term personalized medicine or precision medicines. So that is where you see software coming in, your diagnostic coming in to support the use of therapeutics. So even in one word, you begin to see both the pharma and the technology all being combined together in healthcare. I think this is, in fact, the scene that we're looking at. So it might look like medtech is moving a little bit forward because of the hype with the COVID and everything. But in fact, the pharmaceutical is actually moving very fast, but may not look as if they are actually in a traditional sense. But definitely, I say that in the next 5 years, we're beginning to see more and more of this technology enhanced. And also, I would say precision medicine is definitely one area moving forth. And John, you also mentioned, I think, in brief, of the area of digital health. And all these actually moving towards the area.
Anything new?
Oh, does regulation cover supplements being sold? Not at this point. We are really looking at pharmaceuticals and medtech. And in fact, the supplements regulation is quite variable. So even in Singapore, health supplements are not regulated by the Health Sciences Authority to the same degree as pharmaceuticals and medtech. So that really is because you don't have the same level of clinical trials evidence. So it really is more a listing approach that is taken. And even in other countries around ASEAN, where there may be stricter regulation, it's not to the same degree as pharmaceuticals and biologics. So we don't cover this. It's maybe touched upon if people ask questions, but we don't run courses on this at this point in time.
Any questions from here in the room? Yes? So all the courses are offered by Duke NUS, and then we collaborate with Singapore Biodesign. They offer the courses, but they're run through us. Yeah.
James, would you like to answer this?
Not particularly my area, given the strict regulation data, how it was machine learning.
Maybe I can try.
Yeah, try it.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this. So really, I think anything that we do with medical device or health product regulations, there is a standard that we need to address, right? Be it safety, be it efficacy. So the same applies to AI, machine learning technologies as well. So on top of what we typically look out for safety and efficacy, there's of course the need to look at data protection as well as cyber security. And so for this, there usually also is another ISO standard that governs digital products as well, which we incorporate into the, I would say, the software as a medical device life cycle. So with that, every year, I think HSA has just come out with a guidance document for digital health, right? So if you're interested in this area, you can go look up the HSA website for it. But not just our own HSA, but FDA is also, always renewing and rehashing, their guidelines for this. But definitely this is a space that's coming up. AI currently adoption, right? It depends on whether you stop the AI learning before you get it approved, or you want it to continue, learning as part of the approved product. And of course, we are all moving towards explainable AI as well, so that it doesn't, remain a black box for us. So these are all the evolving trends and guidances in this industry.
I would just like to add on briefly as well that while health products regulation covers a lot of this area in terms of digital health, health services regulation, there's a kind of boundary dropping between the two. And so in CORE itself, we have a new program that's starting up to support the Ministry of Health's Health Regulation Group, where we're going to look at some of these issues. We don't have any courses being run on this at the moment, but the kind of studies we do there may in fact see a kind of integration going forward. But the data protection issues, cybersecurity are all critical aspects. And in fact, how do you regulate AI? It's very nascent in many parts of the world, and we still need to follow this through. But it's really studying this first before we start running courses on it at this point. The legislation is already coming through. It's, so as Mary said, parts of it are already being covered in the devices in terms of what HSA offers, but the Ministry of Health itself has a legislation that is being fleshed out to safeguard telehealth. And the Health Regulation Group already has some components of it, but this will be further developed going forward. So it really is, as Mary said, watch this space. It is coming into place, and it's extremely important that it's actually managed well.
Good. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for coming, and also for our online audience. And thank you, cool presenters. Thanks. Thanks.